Take 5. 5 questions to authors and artists. With a common question, we get a personal perspective on what shapes their views. So, Josip Novakovich, thank you very much for agreeing to do Take 5. So the first question I'd like to ask you is there any book that inspired you to write?
Well, there are several books that inspired me, and one that probably inspired me most of all very directly was The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Tolstoy. He describes death slowly and mercilessly, and after I read the story I felt shattered, and I thought, wow, I didn't know a story could be that powerful. But for me it was powerful because I had seen my father die when I was 11, and when I wanted to write, I always thought that's one story I should somehow tell, and I didn't know how, but when I read The Death of Ivan Ilyich, I said, well, I see that it can be done, and so I didn't do it right away. I wrote all sorts of stories and kind of avoided the story of my father's death, but eventually I wrote it. That's fun, and there were some other books that inspired me. For example, Down and Out in Paris and London by George Orwell. I always liked bohemian lifestyles, and for a while I bummed around Europe, and when I read that book I thought, wow, you can actually write about real experiences, and it can be interesting. It doesn't have to be something totally fantastical.
It's interesting that both books you chose go so directly to the core of your own existence and where you were.
Yeah.
And is that important to you? You don't find the need for books to sort of escape somewhere totally different?
Oh, I do. I mean, the other influences, Metamorphosis, The Very Old Man with Enormous Wings by Marquez, to go in the other direction, to write fantastically, and to escape. But even there, what I admire most are these earthy, concrete details. So in the Very Old Man, The Enormous Wings, the angel is actually an old man, balding man, with only a few teeth in his mouth and parasites in his wings, and he ends up in a chicken coop among a bunch of orange peels and eggshells. Now that's the kind of angel I can believe in,
Yes, I hear that. And is there any book you wish you'd written?
I admire so many books, and I know that I'll never write such good books. But I don't wish that I had written them, because I want to write to do my thing, to express my nightmares, my imagination, and perceptions, ideas, combinations. It has to be my game, my play. I cannot say I wish I did. I wish I had written Don Quixote or the Brothers Karamazov or whatever. That's not going to happen, and I admire those books, but I don't envy them.
You're quite a realist. And what about between the covers of a book? Do you think there's any content or subject matter that doesn't belong there?
Yes, I think English department faculty meetings don't belong there. They're so deadly boring. So to support my writing habit, I have to teach for a living, and teaching's all right. I like being with students who are excited and who suddenly figure out a way to imagine things that is exciting for me too. But sitting through faculty meetings is really dreadful, and so. But in principle, I think we can write about everything,
And could you tell me about whether you like books being read to you, or do you like this other medium of audiobooks?
Oh yes, I do. In the States, for a while I had to travel big distances when I lived there. Now I live in Canada, in Montreal, but. I would occasionally have to drive from central Pennsylvania to southern Ohio and then back, and these were very boring trips, but listening to audiobooks, even to the Iliad and the Odyssey, made it really nice. And then later I realized it was so nice that I started listening to books before going to sleep. And we torture our eyes all day long, and now especially with the internet. And it's really great to be able to close your eyes and just listen and get the story that way.
Totally, I'm the same. And do you feel a little bit promiscuous in having a voice, rather than this intimate connection between you as the reader and the writer? Do you feel it's a bit like a ménage à trois, where suddenly you've got this other voice coming into it? It's no longer this sort of very direct relationship.
It depends on the reader. Some actors read are really too self-important, and they read in this pompous voice, and it could be a story about somebody very humble, and in that case, the voice gets in the way, and the interpretation can irritate me. But most often, the voice enhances it for me. But it's true that we choose our own voice somehow, and there we don't have that choice. It's like with movies, as opposed to novels. Novels, you visualize everything, but you can't visualize anything in a movie. They've done it for you.
True. And finally, do you think, in the days before print, that you would have been a storyteller?
Yeah, I think so. One of the influences that's almost like the question number one for me was good natural storytellers. We even had the delusion in the Balkans that we somehow had influences from the singers of tales, oral tradition, but I doubt that actually there's much of it that has trickled down. But anyway, there's still many people there who can tell you wonderful stories and anecdotes and be entertaining. And as a kid, I envied people like that. And even some of my peers were very skillful at holding your attention through how they spoke, through their rhythms. I stammered a bit. I couldn't do it like they did, and so maybe for that reason that was a challenge. And I'm sure that if there were no written word, I would have ended up being a storyteller anyway. And now the strange thing about the advancement of the multimedia is that I think that we're going back to the written word, through texting and emailing and messaging on Facebook and so on. Now everybody writes, and everybody's talking about how the written word is dying out, and that's just not so. So I think things are very dialectical and unpredictable. I think when the printing presses came in, people were worried that the storytelling would disappear, and maybe it's true that people no longer needed to hold on that much information in their heads, and they couldn't rattle off stories for a long time because they could write them and read them. And but of course, storytelling didn't die. The threat of the written word actually turned to be another enhancement for the storytelling. And so now, if we lose the paper book, people are afraid what's going to happen to the novel and the short story and this and that. And I think, strangely enough, I'm optimistic that there'll be another stage of acceleration and enhancement.
Yeah, I'll go with that. I know you're going to do some reading for us.
Yes. All right, so first I'll read a page from story Spleen, in which there's an encounter between a man and a woman. They're both from Bosnia, and they're in Cleveland, Ohio. So this is from woman's point of view and female point of view. The second round of ale got to my head. The American bars are dark. We kissed in the darkness under the spell of dark ale, or under the excuse of it. He tasted of unfiltered cigarettes, and I liked that. It reminded me of home. Yes, I had kissed a few Americans and non-smoking immigrants who before the kiss regularly chewed mints, so their mouths were cool, slightly antiseptic. Well, the 3-4 times I had kissed, they went to the bathroom to floss their teeth, no doubt, and to brush them, so you'd get a refurbished mouth. But this was a European kiss, old style, with a nicotine bite to it, and an undertone of hot peppers. He must have had feferonki somewhere. The kiss was hotly reminiscent of the old continent, so I closed my eyes and floated into the smoky spaces with the Turkish coffee poured from jezva, coppery vessels, and heavy dregs on the bottom, from which old peasant women read fortunes. Upon drinking a cup, you'd have a few coffee grains left in your mouth, to chew on, to chase around your mouth with your tongue, and that is what the kiss now felt, like a grainy chase, a gritty and biting kiss. I stretched my neck and he kissed it, his 5 o'clock whiskers scratching me like a rasping paper, raw, but I liked that sensation of hurt. We went to my home and continued our erotic pursuits so impatiently that we had not fully undressed. I wondered why this man trusted me and let me pull at his tie. I felt a sudden impulse to strangle him. Inexplicable, but tempting.
Fantastic, thank you.
That's one. And,
that's really interesting, the two cultures, how you've captured it with literally a different kind of a kiss. Yes, absolutely. Any chance for another?
Yes, actually there is a story that's, it's a tiny story, you'll see. I think it's 900 words.
So that's like 10 minutes.
3 pages, no, it's 7.5.
Perfect.
Okay.
That's really impressive. 7.5 minutes.
Well,
I always allow 3.5 minutes a page.
I think 2.5.
Okay.
So 3 pages and just a sec, it's coming up. Okay, so this story is set in a Croatian town, Nizograd, and here we go. In front of Hotel Slavia stood a white truck loaded with curvaceous bottles in the form of hand grenades. Crowds gathered and gazed at the precious reddish darkness, resembling the darkness of breathless venous blood. 2 boys, Ivan and Tomo, crawled on their knees through melting snow between the legs of adults. Like 2 dogs off the leash, they sniffed quickly. Ivan had heard Coca-Cola was coming, but he did not believe it. He had waited for Christ for years and years, and Christ was not on the clouds yet. But the Coca-Cola was there in the snow. "They're going to start selling it next week," said a voice. "First they need to see whether they thrill." "What does it taste like?" Tomo whispered into Ivan's ear, and Ivan said, "Can't tell you right now." "Why not?" "It's a state secret." "But everybody's going to know how it tastes. It will be sold next week." "That's doubtful," said Ivan. "The drink is reserved for the mayor and his guests. Maybe we'll even see Tito in our town." Late that night, the boys tiptoed to the hotel yard and stared at the truck through the cracks between the planks of wood in the fence. With trepidation, they crawled beneath the fence, grabbed a box of Coca-Cola, and rushed home. "Let's drink right now," Thomas said. "No, not yet. You're supposed to drink it with ice. Without ice, it doesn't work." "But it's cold enough." "No, it has to be icy. We'll leave them in the snow overnight." "But why not pour it into a cup and put some icicles into the Coca-Cola? See, there's enough ice." Tomo pointed to the roof of the house. Icicles hung like straight, transparent mammoth teeth. Tomo cracked one from the roof, broke it into pieces, and chewed them. "Don't do that. Your teeth will crack," said Ivan. "Please, let me drink Coca-Cola. I have the ice." "No, the ice has to come out of the Coca-Cola. You mustn't mix outside ice with it." "But why not?" "If you do, it won't be real. There'll be water in it." The bottles were lined up in the snow. Ivan and Tomo watched the bottles, shedding flashlight over them as if over war prisoners, imprisoned little Americans, whose caps soon would be twisted off and brains drunk. They shivered, partly from the cold, partly from the thrill, the cosmopolitan thrill. You need not go to America to feel like an American. Just drink Coke with ice, the Eucharist with the blood and the flesh, the wine and the wafer of the United States of America, the land that touches the moon. After midnight, when Ivan seemed asleep, Tom stole out of the room and went barefoot into the snow. But Ivan heard him and caught him just as he was about to touch a bottle. Ivan tied him to his bed so that Tomo was now like a dog on the leash, and like a sad dog he squealed until he fell asleep. In the morning Ivan untied him and they rushed out. The bottles had burst. An icy light red Coca-Cola, like fresh arterial blood in the shape of the bottle, stood there. The boys separated the bits of glass from the Coke. Tomo moaned. "Shut up," Ivan said. "Why, how are we going to drink it now? It's all ice." Tomo couldn't wait. He put the Coke ice into a pot and was about to place the pot on the stove. "Don't do that. If the Coca-Cola melts too fast, it will lose its flavor." Several hours later, with tears of impatience in his eyes, finally allowed to drink, Tomo gulped liquid Coke and chewed ice at the same time with fear, as if he would be transubstantiated at the end of the cup. At first Tomo felt nothing except the icy anesthesia in his lips and tongue. But as the contracting tart taste reached in, he spat it all out on the floor. "Why, this is cough medicine!" Ivan, in the meanwhile, chewed slowly and gulped, his eyes closed and his face twisted into an expression of beatitude, as if the inner certainty of salvation sweetly permeated his cheeks and eyelids. And then he coughed, shuddering, and he coughed so much that a doctor was called in. "Yeah," said the doctor, "the boys got it again." And that winter Ivan had a more acute bronchitis than any year hitherto. He stayed in bed for 2 weeks reading, and Tomo served him a glass of Coca-Cola every 6 hours.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Josip Novakovich, have I said that correctly?
Josip Novakovich.
Josip, totally incorrectly.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
But
Appreciate
Joseph
it.
is fine, everybody. No, it's a flexible name.
Oh, good.
Especially now that I'm changing cultures.